Okay, and we are recording. So thanks for joining, everyone. Welcome to the, what's today, Wednesday, March 28th edition of Moving Monolithic Applications to Kubernetes. We had a really productive call last week. We were able to do a live MySQL cutover. We understood that in the video recording, we missed a screen capture of the actual MySQL migration process, although we have the audio captured. So at the end of this call today, if anybody wants to stick around, we're going to reenact the MySQL migration again and re-record that, and so that we can stick that in last week's video, which is what Josh, who's in the office with us today, and I were just working on as you guys were all joining the call. It's just making sure that was ready to go so we can go through that pretty quickly. Agenda for today, we'll go around, we'll do our intros, get an update from everyone, understand why you're here, what you want to learn, what you've been working on, where you are, and then we will start to go into looking at solving this. Right now we have an issue with a persistent volume in our Kubicorn cluster, which has rendered all of the MySQL migration work we did last week effectively useless because it's not getting persisted anymore. So I think goals for today's call are going to be understand and hopefully fix the persistent volume issue. I think we have a good idea of how to do that, and get some data migrated over from the old database to the new one. So we'll go around and we'll give intros. Again, the rule here is if you have your video on, that means I'm going to pick on you and call you and ask you to talk. If you want to turn your video off, I will politely leave you alone. But like always, and this goes for everyone here in the room as well, feel free to jump in and interrupt me and ask questions. We're all kind of here to help each other. Okay, so my updates are, I had to rebuild the MySQL server. And I guess it's important to get the terminology right here. When I say rebuild the MySQL server, I mean rebuild the real MySQL virtual machine, not the MySQL pod in Kubernetes. So this, I think we've been calling this the old MySQL server, or the legacy one. So I had to rebuild that, which was a manual process. This is the second time I've had to do it. The reason I had to do it is because I stopped the instance, and when I restarted it, I lost the master password for MySQL in the system logs. So in order for us to get a new MySQL password out of the system logs out of AWS, we had to create a new instance. So that was an interesting thing to go through. One of the things I learned while doing that earlier today is there's about 12 steps that go into getting a MySQL server up and running outside of Kubernetes. And as we're migrating this, having a good idea of what those steps are probably more valuable than the actual server itself. Just because it was like, oh, I'd already done all this stuff and I had to go through and like remount the drives and do all that kind of fun stuff. So that was a big learning experience. Other than that, we have the app server that is running here. We're getting an error, so I think we'll probably start by fixing this error and looking at the persistent volume stuff first today. And then other than that, I don't have any updates. So we'll go across my screen here, and then we'll do folks here in Seattle with us. And yeah, who you are, why you're here, what you've been working on, what you want to work on, anything you want to tell us, your favorite color. Tim Carr, you're first on my list.
All right, so I'm Tim Carr. I'm, I guess, a cloud solutions architect with this consulting company called Ahead in Chicago. Helping a lot of kind of customers move out of their existing enterprise data centers, right? And so this is typically like, how do we move out of our VMware environment into even public cloud in the first place? So this has been the next step of their journey, right? And I'm focusing on helping customers in that space. So I've been, kind of following along as I've been able to with the calls here, and I think they're wonderful. So this is really the first time I've been able to join live. I'm joining with my puppy Hattie dog, who's a German short-haired pointer, and my favorite color is green.
Okay, and we're gonna need to see a picture of your dog, so you're gonna have to pick your camera up and move it.
Okay, hold on a second. Let's see if I can do this like good. Here's Hattie.
Hi.
Hi, Hattie.
Say hi to YouTube.
Instantly increase hits.
Yeah. No, we went from having like 100 likes a week to a few million likes a week. Thanks, Tim. I really needed that. Right. Looks like Sanket, you're next.
Hey guys, I'm Sanket Patel. I'm an engineer here at eGen Solutions working on infrastructure, and my updates are just went through updating a couple of readmes and just learning things.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Good to see you. Doug Fish, you are next.
Hi again, Doug Fish, Mayo Clinic. I have still had limited participation in our effort here, in part because I have been starting to engage in a real project here. We're adopting containers gradually here, and I had hoped to say, let's do Kubernetes and let's do stateless containers and make it easy at first. And that all went very good and fine for a while until state inevitably caught up with me. So I'm really glad we've been having these little talks.
Nice.
Also,
yeah, this is really what we should rebrand this as: people in Kubernetes dealing with state. Because yeah, that's really what's going on here.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, glad to have you back. Sorry about your woes. Hopefully, we can all come together and figure out easier.
It's progress, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll figure it out. We'll get it done. I'll like spend a weekend and like write a tool, and it'll fix everything. It'll be great.
That's what I'm hoping for here.
Yeah, we just have to figure out what tool that is, like what we need. Okay, so here in the office we have Dhananjay here at Heptio.
Hi, I'm Dhananjay Mahajan. I'm working on products at Heptio with Kris.
Yep. Josh.
Hey, so my update for the week is reviewing some of the issues with dynamically created persistent volumes on AWS. The charts that we deployed originally with Helm were done within GKE, and we didn't run into these persistent issues there. So the solution that I've proposed is to name a persistent volume and use that as an existing claim in order to move past the issues that we're running into right now.
Okay. Cool. Well, welcome everyone. It's good to see you. So again, it looks like we have, let's just do a quick state of the world so we know kind of what I have on my end, and then we can talk about what we want to hack on and what we want to work on. So let's get my terminal pulled up. Can you guys see this okay? Looking for a thumbs up. No?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, you see my screen. Duh.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is our application that is running on an app server. I'm going to open up a new tab here, and we're going to grab a connection to MySQL. So the first instance we were on is this one called Java Prototype. We're going to jump in this instance now as well, which is an Ubuntu server. We will sudo apt, and we will go to opt MySQL, or opt bitnami MySQL. So there is that one. And then we have a node and a master for a Kubernetes cluster also running here in Amazon. And let's make sure we can access that cluster. Okay, so 10.0.0.113. We should see that here. Yeah, right there. Great. Okay, so the application server should be talking to the MySQL server on port 3306, which, remember, our app server is running here, which is running a copy of the Java prototype Java code from github.com/heptio/java-prototype. And we should be able to resolve it here, except for we're getting this error. The other error that I think would be interesting to look at is what Josh had brought up, which is this persistent volume error. So let's demonstrate that really quick. So we have some pods running, one of which is called new MySQL, but we do not have the Java application running. So the volume was in the MySQL deployment, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So let's get deployments running in the default namespace. And let's describe this pod and see what we have going on here. This thing keeps getting in my way.
Yeah, empty dir.
Where do you see empty dir?
So data type.
Ah. Interesting. Okay, so we want to fix this empty dir problem.
Mm-hmm.
I vote, well, because really what needs to happen is we need to ensure that the application is talking to MySQL. We need to ensure that MySQL is replicating here, and we need to ensure that this is now going to get saved to a volume that we can use down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Where should we start?
I believe we should create a PV, name it, create a PVC, and then use that in the existing claim with a redeployment of MySQL.
So manually create a new volume, map it to the deployment, restart the deployment, and move forward from there.
Right, and then to test that, once we've written data to it, we can nuke the pod, and the pod should recover with the data.
And then after we have the pod in a ephemeral state where we can restart the pod and always get the same data back, we then want to go and debug the app and verify that data is going from HTTP on port 8080 on our app server to MySQL to the Kubernetes MySQL deployment, mm-hmm. to the volume. And then when all of that's done, we can hook it up to Arc and take it back by it. Okay. What does everybody else on the call think? Does that seem like a same plan of attack here?
Yes, it does.
Cool. Let's write these steps down so we remember them really quick. So we want to manually create a new PVC in AWS and map to Kubernetes. We want to map that to the existing MySQL deployment. Verify we can nuke pods. And then we want to do a end-to-end with legacy components and the newly created volume. I love making game plans. Cool. All right. Josh, why don't you walk us through your plan of attack here for creating a new PV and PVC in AWS?
So let's take a look within the cluster to see what storage classes are currently present.
Okay.
So we're going to do qcontrol get storage class. Okay, so there's just the default GP2 that is built out. So we need to capture that when we do our storage class name. We've got our provisioner. Okay, so let me share a small YAML to create the persistent volume, and then we'll be able to deploy that.
Do you want to put it in the doc, or where should we put this YAML?
We can put it in an issue on GitHub.
Yeah, because we should probably add it to the repo.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, opening my Goland ID. Don't want to do that. So we have this issue number 42 already open?
Correct. Yeah, so I'm going to just add a comment to that.
And while you do that, I'm going to poke around at this application to see what might be going on here. So it's kind of funny because we intentionally wrote this application to break, and it keeps breaking. And now it's just like getting annoying. Like before it was like, oh, this is so exciting, our app keeps breaking, and now it's just like, I just want this thing to work so we can test the rest of our system. And it looks like our scroll back buffer expired as well.
All right, now we generate a claim like that.
Did you already add the comment?
I did.
So let's see what we have here. So we have a PV, write once, and we want to recycle.
And we can modify that however we want. That's just a placeholder. We can certainly deploy it in any way, shape, or form we see necessary.
So wait, where am I? Let's go here. Workspace, Java prototype. We want to put this in the chart, right?
We will probably want to simply create this separate from the MySQL chart, and then when we set or have our values.yaml, we can say persistence equals existing claim.
Okay. So I just added in the top level directory of the repo for now. We can move that later.
Okay.
So we should be able to kubectl apply -fpv.yaml.
Excellent.
Volume mode.
Well, straight from the docs, let's see what's going on here. Prior to 1.9, what is the cluster version?
Oh, was it K version?
Yeah.
Or is that going to tell me the version of?
It's fine. Yeah, that'll be it.
Oh, I hate it. Client version,
1.9,
server version.
Server is 1.84. Okay, so we need to pull the volume mode spec out. We can just delete that line because.
Okay.
Sure.
You know, I can upgrade our, well, that's a different story. I can create a new cluster if needed. Okay.
Let's see if this flies here.
Persistent volume Java prototype MySQL is invalid. Volume type.
Yes.
Let's see. Let's go to the docs. System volume.
So we need to declare AWS Elastic Block Store.
You found it.
I was in the same docs that you were. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. I can go back and look too. So I think we do volume type equal to this one here.
Yes.
Yeah. Right?
Give that a shot.
We can just pull the API docs. So we are in, what do you say, 182?
It may be the provisioner. 1.84, I think it was.
1.84. Where are the different objects? This doc site changed since last time I was here.
So in the example, they're showing, sorry,
No, you're good.
they're showing NFS, so I think we literally put awsElasticBlockStore in that.
Okay.
So that's just named as the plugin.
Does that have any sub fields we need to define?
I can see.
So you're saying we want it here. Like that. Let me see your example again.
But that did have,
Right, it's got a path and server.
right, which is only true for NFS. It's interesting that we don't have a.
Totes my goats. Looks like our friends at OpenShift have an AWS Elastic Block Store example. Yeah, here we go.
There we go.
Which, why on earth
So,
OpenShift has?
So we need fsType and volumeID. Ah, so you actually need to create an EBS.
Right.
Within your
I was
console.
wondering when we were going to have to do that.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it's been a while because I've been using Dynamic for so long. Interesting how technology outloads our ability to do it manually.
Yeah, so let's create a new volume. Should I do it manually or should I?
Yeah.
Picking on you. So we'll do 100 gigs.
Has to be in the same zone.
Yeah, which zone are we
I think
in?
we're in B.
Let's check and see. I've learned about guessing volumes in Amazon the hard way.
So we want this within the node, which is 2B. Yes.
2B.
2B or not. Perfect.
So does everybody see what we're doing here and understand what's going on? Yep. Cool.
Yep.
So here's our volume ID. We can save that there. And let's do this one. That way when we get done here, I can clean all these up and add some docs around it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's call this, what did you say we should call it? MySQL?
Java prototype.
Yeah, I liked that name.
And that, yeah, just a.
So when we define the file system type here, is it going to go and create the file system for us? Because I know EBS by default does not do that.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the disk is just a blank block store currently.
Yeah.
So this will actually write the file system type.
So let's copy this in. Cool.
Is it going to be important to set the capacity, the storage capacity, so it matches what's been configured?
As long as our claim is less than the total size of the PV, it will successfully bind.
Okay.
So we're going to create a claim after this that's going to be 5 gigs or lower.
Can we test that?
You want it to fail?
Yeah.
Sure.
You know I love breaking stuff. So 101 gigabytes. Does that look good?
1.21 gigawatts.
Yeah, exactly. So now let's try to apply this.
Did we update the volume ID?
Oh, did that not make it in?
Oh, we're in the old one.
Oh, let me get out of here. I guess I could like use an IDE, that way you guys aren't watching me in Emacs all day.
That's why people tune in.
Here for the novelty. So yeah. So we have the new volume ID. I did update this one.
Yeah, okay.
And then we'll do 105. Okay, so pv2.yaml.
Word.
Very good. So now we want to bind this on our deployment.
Now we need to create a claim that uses the persistent volume and then expressly call the created claim from within the deployment.
So let's create a persistent volume claim. I'm going to pull the docs up here, just because I have a feeling.
So this one, throw in as well. We can change the name if we choose.
Okay, that's a pod. It's a storage class.
Okay. So in the comments,
Here we go.
creating the claim.
Sorry. Did you add something?
I added a comment into GitHub.
Oh, got you.
So
Can I edit this one? Yeah. Let me just update this really quick. This is the first one. There. Okay, so here's our persistent volume claim.
right. So this is essentially going to say, is there an available volume that can match these criteria? So here you can put your storage as 106 gigs and your claim will fail.
So why did that first one not fail then?
Because the claim is deterministic or dependent on the volume. The volume's capacity is set. If the claim is greater than the volume, then it's not going to be able to bind because it won't find an available volume.
So we should edit this one and bring it down to 100 then, the persistent volume, right? Because this is defined 105, but it's really only 100 under the covers. So we should make those match.
You can certainly just create the claim larger. If you edit it inline now, it's really going to be upset with you given the fact that the EBS already exists, right? We did the block store separately.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, interesting. It didn't even, well, maybe it did use that volume ID.
I think it did.
How is that possible? Is it dynamically?
Because we created a volume.
But it wasn't 105 gigs. So
right, that's what I'm saying.
no, that's
why
now I understand what you're saying. That makes very little sense that it actually is available. But maybe it won't bind now.
Yeah, I'm thinking it won't bind to the PVC now. But I think we should do this first. Yeah. Just so that we're making things play nice here. Okay, so now we can bring our PVC in. And we'll bring this up to 100 gigs as well. Volume mode again.
Oh, because we're still on 1.8.4, sorry.
You're good.
So we can just trim volume mode file system from that as well.
The new volume mode stuff is really cool.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Let's see if it's bound.
It's bound.
Nice.
So in our deployment knows to automatically look for this.
Our deployment needs to have persistence.existing claim equal that label.
Let's see.
So we're going to have to redeploy with Helm and set that value in the command line or manipulate. Well, we don't have a values.yaml file for it. We just use stable.
Well, we do because we have the work that we did last week.
Right, and that values.yaml file was specific to the app.
Okay.
The MySQL deployment was straight out of the box, stable MySQL, I believe. Let me go back and make sure I'm not lying to everybody here.
You're good. That's my job.
Okay, yeah, we didn't use a values file. We were just doing set on the command line. So we were manipulating it. It wasn't vanilla stable MySQL. But we can.
Okay, sorry, I was just familiarizing myself with the deployment. Okay, so we want to redeploy with Helm.
Yes.
So
Helm OS, let's purge the existing.
Okay, I'm going to nuke everything. Okay. And where's our documentation here?
It's in the README. So we need to do those exports again. And let me look at the existing claim argument from the MySQL stable.
Cool. Does that look?
That looks correct. We just need to add persistence. Oh, so rather than instead of persistence.size, we're going to do persistence.existingClaim, camel case.
Persistence dot what?
Persistence.existing.
Okay.
Claim, sorry, and capital C. Yeah, perfect.
And then the name.
And this is the name of our claim that we've already created.
Which is here.
Perfect. Deploy.
You know, I want to read everything.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just being,
Okay. No resources found. Which namespace did this go into?
Java prototype. That was one of the exports.
Oh.
So if we wanted it in default, I guess we could have changed that.
Nope, I can just do this. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Alrighty.
So we should look at the pods there, see if they're up. Pending.
Keep doing K. KJ, describe.
PO.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Very good. Oh, it's in the wrong namespace. Okay, so let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's do this the right way.
So just eliminate your namespace export. You should be golden.
I'm going to wait for Helm to delete our deployment here.
Yeah.
What's broken now?
It's 4 seconds. It's the init.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah. No nodes are available to match all the predicates. Give it a little bit of time.
Oh, watch not found.
-W.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
I just like doing it like the old school way. What's going on with our deployment? Is there any taints or tolerations in here?
Should not be. And you only have one node in the cluster.
Yeah. The claim name looks right.
Mm-hmm.
No volume zone conflict. That's got to be, we created this in the right zone. It's in US West 2B.
And this is all the volumes in there. I'm wondering whether or not it dynamically created the PV separate from that.
Yeah, Kubernetes dynamic PVC.
Okay, and that one landed in 2A, which is why it's not being found. So this is the same issue that we run into with dynamic creation.
So we think this is something with the cloud provider, don't we?
Yep.
So if I create a volume in the right zone, with that name, does it have any tags? Yeah. So the cloud provider came in and tagged all this stuff.
Yeah. But we want
Why did it dynamically create a volume?
because you created, I'm thinking because you asked for one with size greater than the available. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense because you named the EBS that it should have attached to.
Right. Let's look at our, let's do this.
Let's get PVC or PVs, yeah.
So we have
one PVC. So that volume there may have been dynamically created. We can look at that.
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, so it's 100 gigs, it's bound, volume name.
So if we look, we'll see that dynamically created one, the name matches, it's US West 2A, which is not available to our node.
Right, 2760.
Yeah.
2760. So I'm wondering,
do we need to specify the availability zone in the region as a part of the volume ID? I was just looking through some docs, and I got a different thing. I threw it in the chat. I found what I found in the chat, and it had a different volume ID that specified both the region and then the overall volume ID. Do we need to do something like that?
So you can define a storage class that lists the zones, which in part defeats the dynamism of creating the persistent volume, right? If you're locking it to a specific availability zone, then you don't have cross availability or high availability. I was hoping that we could avoid that by actually creating the persistent volume and using that as a named PVC, but it just went ahead and created it dynamically regardless, which is odd. So when we bound that, when we created that PVC, it didn't actually use our PV that we created in the right zone. It just dynamically created another one.
Okay.
So we need to try to force it to use the PV that we generated rather than dynamically creating one.
Right.
And you're right, Tim. There's a lot of ways to skin this, but I think this is a really valuable depiction of how hard it is to get this working for various providers.
Yeah. Interesting. So we want to figure out either, well, I think we need to figure out both, right? We need to figure out, one, why it was created in this zone and how we can fix it from doing that moving forward. And two, why our PV we created did not get bound to our PVC. Those are the two things, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. And those other PVCs that are there unbound, I would be willing to bet that the first time we ran this,
yeah,
it generated those in the wrong zone, and so it fell over on us.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. Can you specify, if I was just to edit this volume name, that wouldn't work, would it?
I never thought of that, but it certainly could. So it's go all the way to the top. It's the one that we generated.
I think it's this one here, isn't it?
Yes.
Nope. It's gonna yell at me. Okay. Ooh. Or is it just gonna not let me? Yeah. The name is invalid. Okay. So let's do this, because I can hack on this outside of the scope of the call, and we still have a couple of other action items we should touch on, and we only have 15 minutes left.
Sure.
And maybe we can do some of this after the call in that maintenance window too. Let's figure out what's going on with the PVC, get it bound and get it happy, and then just share our findings after the fact. And then let's move over to the app, unless anybody has another suggestion or another idea for tinkering on this right now. Cool. So the two items are, number one, let's figure out why we were dynamically creating the PV, the EBS volume. And two, let's figure out why our volume wasn't mapped to the PVC. Okay. And I will assign these to myself. And then after we get this figured out, let's talk, where do we want, like, how do we want to map this moving forward for our repo? Because a whole part of the exercise here is first figuring out what needs to be done and then capturing that and then making it so we can repeat that. Right now, our repository is kind of filled with, like, we have a charts directory, we have, we have a manifest directory, we have a Docker file, we have a couple of different subdirectories, each kind of doing their own thing. I think it would make sense to have this physical volume stuff automated somehow, like shell script to start, so we can at least define a few environmental variables and then run it and then get MySQL up and running how we want it. Do we want to stick that in a home chart, or are we good with a shell script?
Shell script's fine, yeah. Because we would want to, if we're naming the volume, we have to be able to grep that volume with an existing block.
Okay. Okay, what's our thing here? So then that, after we have the shell script in place, we would then want to do an end-to-end test.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we'd do our migration over again.
Yeah.
Although now we know what 2 records in the VM.
What do you mean 2 records?
We have 2 entries in the MySQL VM that we're migrating from.
Yeah.
Because we just rebuilt it.
Yep.
So we want to add some records in there so that the migration.
Okay. And that kind of implies that we're debugging the app.
Right.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to touch on today was we now have readiness probes defined, liveliness and readiness probes. Where are those at? I thought I merged those in, didn't I?
They are in docs, I believe. Let's see. These were actually in the application itself.
Okay.
That's where he added the configurations.
So we still need to define them in the manifest then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have that in here? Let's create a key for that.
No, we got the old pull request. See where that came from. Outsourced.
Okay. So I think this probably merits a blog post that sort of says, here are the big components of running a stateful app. We use this one as in context. And here's an example of working code of how to do this with the Amazon controller in version 1.9 and above. Okay. I can definitely work on that. How do you spell liveliness? I'm going to add one more issue, which is seed the new database.
There is both an issue and a project card.
For that already?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Perfect.
So let's see on the projects. In the success criteria, load to VM with greater than 20 gigs of data.
Okay. I move that over to in progress. Okay. I think that gives us a fair amount of homework for the next call. And hopefully we'll have that blog post up and running by then. Does anybody have questions about the PVC stuff that we've been working on today? Or anything else they wanted to bring up?
Did you want to mention the next call will be 2 weeks from now?
Oh yeah, I will be out next week. So unless somebody else wants to drive next week, we can push it back 2 weeks from now. Oh, that's scary. So I'll update the calendar invite, and we'll pick this up in 2 weeks. Cool. So I'm gonna do like a fake hang up on this call, and then we can move back into the MySQL stuff. So if folks want to drop, go for it. And we will just jump into the MySQL stuff.
So now we have a blocker where we have to get the persistent volume issue solved before we can do
the migration. Right, but like I'm wondering, just because we missed so much of the actual MySQL work, if it makes sense to go back and record that without the persistent volume stuff, or if we just do the big end-to-end when we get there.
It would if you have retained the dump. If
Right.
you did not retain the dump, then we have nothing to migrate because we've replaced the VM MySQL cluster.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure people had an example of our approach to
Exactly.
MySQL, but I think we'll cover that naturally anyway when we do our end-to-end, which we have defined here. Cool. So in that case, if we can get some of this homework done for the next call, I bet we can do the broader end-to-end in that next hour. Let's tag the issues we really want done by our next one.
Okay.
That way we'll actually get them done.
So 42.
And 50.
Mm-hmm.
$33.
Or we could upgrade the cluster to 1.10 and use container storage interface, which may solve all of our problems.
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
Yeah.
But that, assuming that it uses the API to do that for you, rather than all of our mucking around with the EBS creation.
Yeah.
It's not cheating, it's just using the latest version.
Exactly.
Okay, so our due date on this is not going to be the 4th, it's going to be the 11th. All issues for our next call that will demo E2E for the whole process. Okay. And we want these two. Oh, let me refresh her. Okay. Any other issues we want to add for that milestone?
Let's, as a stretch, do ingress and TLS, which is on, 35.
Okay.
Using either contour or manually creating it.
Well, we should just have ingress anyway, and then ingress with TLS with contours.
Nice to have.
Yeah, nice to have.
Perfect.
Cool. Any questions or anything there that folks want to see? What about the liveliness and readiness stuff? I feel like that's more of like, okay, we've done the migration, now what does the operation look like? Yeah. Okay. So the artifact here, I'm going to create like the umbrella issue. So basically, we should work on a README somewhere in the repo that was just going to have all of the steps encapsulated, as well as what we did for each one of the steps along the way, as an example for folks. Okay, cool. Anything else anybody has? Cool. Well, I will see everybody in 2 weeks then.
Thanks for joining the call.
Bye. Thanks for running it.